Hi, this is Norman, and today I'd like to talk about how Star Trek Discovery could take advantage of Star Trek canon and how they're not. Star Trek canon doesn't have to be an anchor, it doesn't have to weigh you down. It could be used in a positive way. Before I get into that, let me say this. This is a fair use video. Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 USC 107. I'm actually not going to use any video images or anything like that, but I just wanted to get that in there just in case. So, Star Trek Discovery Season 1, Season 2, and Season 3 could all have used Star Trek canon in a positive way. Season 1, they wanted to use Klingons as stand-ins for a certain group of Americans. I'm not going to get into the politics of that group, but they wanted to use those Klingons as a stand-in for certain Americans. Season 2, they really could have used Captain Pike and his experiences in a much better light, in a much better way than they did. Season 3 is not so, it's not as much, but they could have used a little bit of Star Trek canon for the story of Georgiou. So, in Season 1, we see the Klingons being stand-ins for a certain group of Americans. Those Klingons could have been all three Klingons that we've seen throughout the history of Star Trek. They could have been TOS era Klingons, they could have been the movie TNG Deep Space Nine Klingons, and they could have been the Discovery Klingons. And here's how they could have used all three to talk about what it means to be Klingon, aka what it means to be American. In TOS, we see human augment Klingons. The human augment Klingons started in 2150. The movie era Klingons and the TNG DS9 Klingons could be your everyday Klingons, your average normal Klingon, and Discovery could be Klingon augment Klingons of the great houses. As we know from Space Seed and from Wrath of Khan, the human augments had superior ambition and they were very audacious. Now, this is something that would appeal to the everyday Klingon, right? They love a good warrior. They love ambition and audaciousness. Their leader, the one who set their style, Kahless, killed their gods. You can't be more audacious and ambitious than that. So these human augment Klingons being more ambitious, being more audacious, would really appeal to the average everyday Klingon. And in the 100 years between the 2150s when they first showed up and the 2360s when you have Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, they could have gained a lot of power, a lot of respect. And this, to the great houses, in the 100 years that they've been building up more and more respect and more power, can be viewed as a threat to their own power base. So the great houses could, in turn, create Klingon augment Klingons. And that's the Discovery Klingons. So the great houses are actually Klingon augments, and they are using the TOS era Klingons as cannon fodder in their wars against the Federation. We know there's a 4 years war with the Federation, and the only thing that the Federation sees or could see in Discovery potentially and in TOS are the human augment Klingons. Because the great houses are trying to get rid of them. Because they're a threat to their power base. And yet they don't do that. They don't use the Klingons to say, A, what does it really mean to be Klingon? AKA, what does it mean to be American? Which is really, I think, the story that they wanted to tell, as far as I understand it, and they didn't tell it. But they could have used those Klingons, the human augments, in that manner to where it's like, these are the only Klingons that the Federation sees. And the Klingon augment Klingons are in the background pulling the strings, manipulating the Federation into doing their dirty work for them. You know, killing off the human augment Klingons. And this would make perfect sense. It would be a great tie-in to TOS. It would explain much better why Kirk, Spock, and McCoy think that Darwin in Trouble with Tribbles is a human, because they look so human to begin with, and just a little bit of cosmetic surgery would make him look completely human. But they don't do that, and it's a real shame. At least in my opinion, they could have used these Klingons in such a better way. So that's where I think they missed an opportunity to use all three Klingons in a really significant way, and told the story that I think they wanted to tell about what does it really mean to be American, aka what does it really mean to be Klingon. The Klingons were supposed to be these stand-ins for this certain group of Americans. So, like I say, you know, canon doesn't have to be an anchor weighing you down. Canon could be used in a really interesting way, and they just sort of missed that opportunity. In season 2, they missed another opportunity, a really great opportunity, and it was laid out for them right there. The big bad in season 2 was this AI called Control. They had let Control run their war with the Klingons, and he did a terrible job of it in season 1. And they also had this other problem, this minor problem with holography, with holographic technology. They could have used Pike, because Pike is in season 2. They could have used his experience on Talos 4 as a warning against holographic technology. And they could have told this story of Pike being manipulated, tortured, and almost enslaved. His first officer almost being enslaved, his yeoman almost being enslaved, his ship almost being destroyed, another human who's already enslaved by basically what amounts to holographic technology. Now, there's a bit of telepathy thrown in there for good measure, but it is essentially holographic technology that is being used by the Telosians. It's just in a slightly different format. So Pike could have come back from his episodes on Talos 4 and said, Starfleet, I've just ripped out all this holographic crap on my ship because it's a danger, and you need to look into it. You need to do this study. You need to study the long-term effects of holograms that are so realistic that you can actually fall in love. You can actually get lost in the story. You can actually get addicted to holographic technology. And you need to do these things, and you need to tear out all the holographic equipment on all the starships until you know better what this stuff is going to look like, how it's going to affect crews. It would have been a great tie-in, again, to TOS, because it would have explained in a much better way why the Enterprise and no other starship in TOS has holographic technology. It would have explained why Pike is against holographic technology better than the reason they gave as, oh yeah, Pike's old-fashioned. He doesn't like new stuff. He's just, he's still just going to use a screen to communicate with. Well, no. Pike would have ripped that crap out of his ship as soon as he got back, because he had just been through this horrific event in his life that is so close to holographic technology that anything that reminds him of Talos 4 and his ordeal, he wouldn't have anything to do with. Not only would it have tied in much better to TOS era technology, but it would have also tied into TNG very neatly, with the Barclay character being a holo addict, with Geordi falling in love with a simulation of Leah Brahms, with Riker falling in love with a complete simulation of this woman called Minuet in season 1, and it would have explained so much better why there is no holographic technology on starships 10 years after Discovery. It would have made so much more sense to do that than to just say, oh, Pike, he's old-fashioned. Don't worry about him. Season 3, not so much of a nitpick, but they could have used, for Georgiou's storyline, they could have used an episode in the original series other than City on the Edge of Forever. They could have used, and I forget the episode name, it's where the inhabitants of the planet can't escape their sun going nova through space travel because they don't have warp drive, but they do have this technology that can send them back in time. But in order for them to live in a different era, they actually have to be processed through a machine called an atavachron. Okay. They could have used that. The first thing that could have happened is, they come forward, however many centuries they come forward into the 32nd century, and they are immediately, all of them are immediately having difficulties, and they have to figure out why in a very quick manner. And it turns out that they have to be processed through an atavachron. And that would have had a long-term effect on the rest of the crew except for Georgiou, because not only has Georgiou been displaced in time, she's also been displaced in universe. And as they say in the story, and this would have been a great foreshadowing for her character, as they say in the story, you're designed to live in the universe you're designed to live in, and in the time era that you're designed to live in. And again, that tie-in to TOS would have been really relevant for the Georgiou character. And they sort of just missed that opportunity as well, because they could have originally realized that the Georgiou character was the mirror universe Georgiou, and so when they processed her through the atavachron, they figured, oh, everything's fine now. They've processed the whole through the atavachron. Everybody's going to be fine. But they didn't, and that's their third missed opportunity to use canon in a positive way and not a negative way. Not to weigh them down, but to actually add to their